Hey ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss Humbert here, and today we're going to be doing Unit 4 Notes 3, so we're going to talk about factoring a trinomial. So this is probably one of the most important parts of Algebra A, is trying to factor a trinomial. And you actually already have a lot of the skills you need to do it. One of those skills that you need is factoring by grouping. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at this. So between 5 and 15, you can divide out of 5. Whenever there's 4 terms, you want to use that factoring by grouping method. Between y squared and y, you can take out a y. So we're dividing each of these terms by 5y. And then we get y squared over y is just y. Negative 15 divided by 5 is negative 3, and the y's over y cancel. Between 4 and 12, you can divide out a 4. So you're dividing each term by 4, and then you're left with y minus 3. So if you look, our leftovers are matched, so we're going to factor those out, and then we're going to write what's left after that, which is 5y plus 4. So that right there is your final answer for number 1. Let's take a look at number 2. Between 18 and 30, you can divide out a 6. And you can also take out an x. So when you divide by 6x, you're left with 3x minus 5. Now here you notice there's a negative sign in the middle of the two groups, so that means your GCF needs to be negative. Well, nothing divides 3 and 5, and there are no x's we can take out. So that's where I always say we take that 1 and put it on the outside. So really here, we're dividing by a negative 1. So I'm going to change the signs of each of those, which is good. Oops, that should be a minus 5, because when I change those signs, then my leftovers are matching, which I need in order for factoring by grouping to work. So we have 3x minus 5 and 6x minus 1. So what is this business, this factoring business that we're talking about? First thing you want to do, always, is to check for a greatest common factor. If you can pull out a greatest common factor at the beginning, your life will be a lot easier. Then, next, multiply a times c. So that means you're going to take and you're going to multiply the coefficient of the first with the constant. Okay, then you're going to set up your x. We've been practicing some of these in class. Here's how the x is set up. I suggest you put this on your sheet. We do a times c. So you're multiplying to a times c. So this right here is your product. And this down here is your sum. So you're going to play a number game. You're going to try and figure out what multiplies to the top and adds to the bottom. Then you're going to solve the x. That's that number game I was just talking about. Then you're going to plug the 2 factors in place of the b term. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to split up the b term as 2 factors. This will still add to be bx. Okay, but we're splitting it up so we have 4 terms, because once we have 4 terms, we can go ahead and factor by grouping. So that's why we do that. Let's take a look at this, okay? So, step 1, GCF. Between 5, 13, and 6, yeah, not going to happen. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with our x then. So we're going to take 5 times 6. Well, that's going to give me 30. So we're multiplying to 30 and adding to 13. So now I have to play a number game. Okay, what multiplies to 30 and adds to 13? Well, that's going to be 10 and 3. So now that I've done this, I'm going to put an x in each of these, and I'm going to use that to split up 13. So 5x squared always stays the same. And then we're going to have 10x, and then 3x, and then 6. Okay, so remember, this is still really 13x, but now I have 4 terms. And once I have 4 terms, I can go ahead and I can factor by grouping. So first, what divides 5 and 10? Well, that's going to be 5. And this should be an x, even though it doesn't look like it. And then out of each term, I can take out an x. So I'm dividing each of the terms in the first group by 5x. So then, 5x squared divided by 5x just gives me x. 10 divided by 5 is 2, and the x's cancel. So then between 3x and 6, I can divide out a 3. And then we're left with x plus 2. So if I notice, my leftovers are matched. This makes me a very happy lady. So then we have 5x plus 3 in our other parentheses. So this right here is your, whoa, I hate when it does that. This right here is your final factored answer. Okay, if you notice in Unit 3, you would take this and do the box method with it. If you did that if you did that, the box method or FOIL method, you would get this answer right here. So that's a way to check your answers. We're just working backwards and forwards. All right, so taking a look at number 4. Can we take out a greatest common factor? Nope, no we cannot. So we're going to do 7 times 4, which gives us 28. So we're multiplying to 28 and adding to 29. These type of problems trip students up a lot because they try and put the bigger number out here. That's not necessarily always how it works. A times C goes up here. So what multiplies to 28 and adds to 29? Well, how about 28 and 1? That is the obvious one that students forget all the time. So we're going to put an x with each of those and use that to split up 29x. So let's go ahead and do that. So our 7x squared stays the same, and then we have 28x plus 1x plus 4. And now we can factor by grouping. So what divides 7 and 28? Well, that's going to be 7. Between x squared and x, we can take out an x. So we're dividing each of these terms by 7x. 7 over 7 cancels. X squared over x is just x. 28 divided by 7 is 4. And x over x is going to cancel out. Again, out of my second group, I cannot take out a greatest common factor. So I'm just going to write out a 1 so that I remember that I need to write a 1 in my parenthesis. So my leftovers are matching, so I'm going to go ahead and write those leftovers out. And once I've written those, in my second parenthesis goes those greatest common factors. So again, we want to make sure that that 1 makes it there. So again, your factors can be written in either way, but that's your final answer. This is really all we're doing today. It's just adding another element to that factoring by grouping. So let's take a look at number 5. So for number 5, between 1, 10, and 16, we can't take out an x. So we're multiplying to 16 and adding to negative 10. Well, we have a positive product and a negative sum. Whenever you have a positive product, you have to have the same signs for your factor. That's the only way to multiply to positive. Well, since our sum is negative, it has to be that both factors are negative. So what multiplies to 16 and adds to a negative 10 is negative 8 and negative 2. So that's what we're going to use to split up 10x. So we get x squared minus 8x minus 2x plus 16. And again, now we're ready to factor by grouping. So between x squared and 8x, we can divide out an x, and we're left with x minus 8. Now here again, we have a negative sign between our two, so we need to take out a negative GCF. Between 2 and 16, we're going to take out a negative 2. So we're dividing each of those by a negative 2, so that's going to change the signs of everything that follows. So x minus 8 and x minus 8. So we can write those out. And once we've got written those, we can write what's left after that, which is x minus 2. So we have x minus 8 times x minus 2 for number 5. Let's take a look at number 6. Again, for number 6, we do not have a greatest common factor. So I'm just going to go ahead and set up my x. So here I'm multiplying to a negative 18 and adding to a negative 7. Well, when you multiply to a negative product, that means you need to have a positive and a negative factor. So what multiplies to negative 18 and adds to negative 7? Well, I'm going to need a positive 2 and a negative 9. The 9 has to be negative because that's the only way that that 7 is going to be negative. So now we're going to take and we're going to split it up. So we're going to do negative 9x plus 2x minus 18. And you see how I flip-flop these from the x? It doesn't matter what order you do the x in. It will always work. If the x is set up correctly, you could have these two numbers flip-flopped. It doesn't matter which order. So now I'm ready to factor by grouping. So between x squared and 9, I can take out an x. So I'm dividing each term by x, and we have x minus 9. So between 2 and 18, we're going to divide out a 2, and then we're left with x minus 9. So then we see that our leftovers are matching, so I can go ahead and factor those out. And once I've gotten rid of those, I'm going to write what's left after that, which is x plus 2. So I have x minus 9 times x plus 2 as my final answer for number 6. So let's take a look at number 7. So for number 7, okay, we're going to look at these, and then, hold on one second, let me just check. Whoops, not what I meant to do. Whoa, welcome to my struggle bus. Okay, so for this one, we're going to come back and talk about this in a second, but let's just go about it as is. So we're going to do 6 times negative 8, which is negative 48, adding to 22. So I'm going to do 24 and negative 2. Okay, so then you can go and set up your x. You're going to do 6x squared plus 24x minus 2x minus 8. So now we're ready to factor by grouping. So between 6 and 24, you can take out a 6 and an x, and you're left with x plus 4. Out of the second group, we're going to take a negative GCF because that's negative, and you're left with x plus 4. So then we're going to factor out x plus 4, and then we're going to write what's left after that. So this is your final answer for number 7. Let's take a look at number 8. So for number 8, you're going to multiply to 2 and add to 3. Again, don't get caught up on this being overcomplicated. It's just 2 and 1. The bigger number isn't necessarily on the top. So we have x squared plus 2x plus 1x plus 2, and factor that by grouping. X plus 2, we're going to take out a 1 out of that second group, factor out your leftovers, and you're going to write what's left after that. Now I want to take a look at some special cases of factoring. It's either that some of them you can take out a greatest common factor at the beginning, and some of them are prime. If they're prime, that means they cannot be factored. So let's take a look at number 9. So for number 9, we're multiplying to 28 and adding to negative 1. So first of all, they both need to be positive. So I could play around with numbers for forever, but ultimately it's not going to be factorable. So if it's not factorable, you write NF, or you can write prime. Either one of those are acceptable answers for number 9. Taking a look at number 10. On number 10, I noticed that 10, 35, and 30 can all be divided by 5. So I'm going to go ahead and divide that out as such. And now I'm going to set up my x. So when I set up my x, I'm just going to focus on this guy. I'm going to ignore my GCF completely. Your greatest common factor is like your little sister. You have to ignore her all the time, but at the end of the day, she still has to be there. So we're going to ignore our 5 for a while. So we're going to take 5 times 6, and that's 30. And then we're going to multiply. Oh, I'm sorry, this is 2. 10 divided by 5 is 2. Good one, Miss Humbert. All right, so this one should be 12. So we're multiplying to 12 and adding to a negative 7. So then that's going to be negative 3 and negative 4. So now I'm going to do my grouping. And again, I'm just going to focus on that inside parenthesis part. So I'm going to go ahead and factor this part. So I can take a y, and I'm left with 2y minus 3. Take out a negative 2, and I'm left with 2y minus 3. So I can factor these guys out and then write what's left over. But again, at the end of it, my GCF needs to make it down to the bottom. So you just take your greatest common factor and you write it down at the bottom being multiplied by your two binomials. Taking a look at number 11. For number 11, you can divide out a 3. And then you're left with x squared plus 8x plus 15. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set up the x for you. So you're multiplying to 15 and adding to 8. That's going to be 5 and 3. So again, you're going to ignore your little sister and factor this by grouping. So I have this all set up for you. I want you to go ahead and factor by grouping. Make sure when you have your final answer down here that you write your greatest common factor on the outside. Last but not least, let's take a look at number 12. So for number 12, we're multiplying to 2 and adding to 2. Well, the only thing that multiplies to 2 is 1 and 2. And 1 plus 2 is 3. Since everything has to be positive, since our sum and our product are positive, this isn't possible. This is not factorable, or you could also write prime. Okay, so that's not factorable. So you notice there's an extra sheet on your note sheet. That is if you need extra help tomorrow. So if you still feel like this is really confusing, I went over this really quickly, whatever it may be, we'll go over some of those tomorrow one-on-one if you need to. So make sure you just ask me if you need extra help. All those extra problems there are only there if you need them. You do not have to. Okay, so make sure you do try and take your Schoology quiz though. Thanks for listening.